if they have the opportunity to do it, and you brought up the Mets to me, and you met up their prospects. You're sorry, I'm changing the subject because
Yeah.
we could get deep in this, but I love your tweet about the Mets. You're like, oh, they have the same records as the Pirates. Oh yeah, by the way, they're 3 times as many games out, and yeah, the Mets aren't going anywhere.
The Mets are I I don't have a ton of sympathy for high paid, high level baseball executives, but you couldn't convince me to take Billy Epler's job for all of Steve Cohen's money. Like that is, I don't know what they're going to do because that is a position where a GM, I'm sure, presented his owner with the probabilities last season at the trade deadline, this offseason. Oh, here's how it's going to work. We're going to be good this year. We're going to be good in 10 years. I'm building you this sustainable organization. And now that they're seeing, I don't know, how unpredictable high priced older free agents are, how the aging curve comes for all of us. I don't know how they dig themselves out of this mess. I don't know how they would get people to even take these contracts if they wanted to sell off.
Is Buck on the hot seat?
I
Because
think he's gotta be.
I'm starting to see on social media and online where fans are kind of saying Buck isn't making the right moves, but then there's the defending side saying, well, the front office is telling him what to do, and Buck's not running the team. He wants to the way he wants to run it. Is Buck? Is there a time where Buck would go and say, "Hey, Billy Epler, screw you. I'm managing the team the way I want to, and if you fire me, this is my last year anyways. So just fire me, and we'll take a shot at it." Because if you watch Buck, he doesn't look like his normal confident self,
No.
even in his interviews and stuff.
He's looking defensive. He's looking a little thin skinned. Here's the thing. I feel like there's this tendency to want to understand what exactly is the manager responsible for, and we'll never know exactly what happens behind the scenes. But as far as I'm concerned, with the Mets, Buck is letting me down, his team down, the fans down, because we're seeing after every loss the way that the players take responsibility, take accountability, own up to their mistakes. And we're seeing Buck be kind of evasive, deflective. If your job is to be the manager, regardless of what's going on behind the scenes, you should not be putting a negative spotlight on your players. You shouldn't be, I don't know, like he's not doing what the manager can do, which is sort of absorb some of that negativity, try to insulate his players, try to keep the mindset. I've never been a baseball player, but I've been in clubhouses, and I can tell that like it's just harder to win when there's that much negativity. And the Mets need to figure out some way to feel like winners even before they are winners. And if Buck isn't doing that, regardless of who's responsible for setting the lineup and building the bullpen, he's not doing a good job as manager.
I would have loved, and I would still take Billy Epler's job, even if I have to deal with a little bit of short-term pain because of the resources that he's given. And it even goes beyond, Hannah, the amount of money he can spend on players. Like he can spend on anything within the organization. He's not going to get a no for the most part if you convince your owner. International free agency, more on research and development and developing your prospects, even scouting, wherever you want it to go. I'm sure if you talk to that kind of owner, right, and Steve Cohen, and you convince him of that, you're on. Now, at the same time, you might not have that long of a shelf life because you're not doing the tanking deal. So for me, I'm looking more at the roster construction here, and I'm like, did they do this right? You know, even if you spent on some of the big boys, did you do this right? Because the great GMs do both, right? They spend on the big ones like Friedman bringing in Mookie Betts and signing him long term. But aside from this year, how often has the Dodgers bullpen pulled random players out of their hats from waiver claims, just like the Rays always do? I'm not seeing enough of that in my mind with the Mets. And I know it's been obviously a short run for Billy right now, but he also comes with a track record from the Angels where it was terrible then, and he left Perry Minasian with a disaster, according to most people I've spoken to within the Angels. So in my mind, if I'm Steve, I'm going front office first because I'm already looking at David Stearns and being like, let's go, baby.
And maybe David Stearns wants to bring a manager with him.
Yep, that's true.
I think so. David Roth over at Defector had a really good article. He writes great, like pathos-riddled stuff about the Mets. But this was like a more sort of nitty-gritty take on the fact that like what the good teams do is optimize their players. And that sounds so buzzwordy or whatever, but put them in positions to succeed. It's not that hard to figure out what to do with Justin Verlander, but it is hard to figure out sort of what to do with, I don't know, Andrew Heaney or someone who's like having a lot of success with the Texas Rangers right now. And you're right, like that is a failure of a team construction, like a roster construction, or it's a failure of the player development, which is something that the Mets have been struggling with for dating back to the last regime, and something that maybe takes a little bit more time to turn over than 2 years. But what you need to do is put players in positions to succeed, whether that's telling your pitchers what kind of matchups would work the best for them. Like we're not across the board with the Mets. They're not optimizing the talent that they so obviously have. And they're also not like developing players who other teams didn't, like JD Davis, for example. Yes, they knew to get JD Davis and to give him a chance, but the Giants are having so much more success with him than the Mets did. And why is that? Is that a coaching problem? Is that an analytics problem? Somewhere there needs to be a diagnosis of why the players they have are not succeeding as much as they could to their talent level. But also I just think like you bought really high on Justin Verlander. Like, yeah, he won the Cy Young, but he got the whole year before that off to rest his body, which I'm sure helps when you're 40 years old. And then he pitched deep into October last year, and he was as expensive as he's ever going to be. And yeah, he's not as good as he was in his Cy Young winning season.
Darn rough trade. Go ahead. Sorry.
Exactly.
Sorry, I had a cough. It's been a long.
It was a long night. Yeah,
I think it was 4 prospects in that trade.
Fleeced them. Is the NL East, when the Phillies get back in the wild card lead, is the NL East been a disappointment this season?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But there could be 3 teams. There could be 3 teams that make the playoffs from the NL East when the Marlins continue to do what they're doing and the Phillies overtake the Giants when they fall back down to earth.
It could absolutely change, but the NL East has been a disappointment, if only because 1, the Mets are bad, and 2, I thought Trey Turner was the greatest signing of the offseason, and I am sure that over the course of his tenure with the Phillies, that will prove to have been a great addition. But if it's disappointing just because I thought the Phillies were going to be more fun. I thought they were going to be more exciting. I thought they were going to ride this high from the World Series appearance, and it's felt like a lot of stop and start for the Phillies. It's felt like a lot of stop for the Mets, and the Braves are getting really hot, but I don't want it to be a cruise to another division. Like the Braves winning, great, they're a phenomenal team, but that is the least exciting outcome for the NL East. So in that way, it's been a disappointment.
You talk about the bandwagon. Could it be because the Phillies posters over your shoulder that you're rooting so hard, like Eric Kratz for the Phillies?
There's a lot of Philly stuff if you look around.
Man.
I'm from there.
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Hannah loves Scrapple, so
Yeah.
I do. I
Pennsylvania
really do.
pride.
Like,
Yeah.
do you eat ketchup or apple butter on your Scrapple? And do you fry
Maple
it?
syrup.
Syrup.
Maple
Maple
syrup.
syrup.
There's 2 ways to eat Scrapple. 1, just with syrup, like you would like a breakfast sausage, or 2, on an egg sandwich, fried egg, cheese, Scrapple, like English muffin.
I don't even know what Scrapple is, so
Bellissimo.
You won't like it more if you find out.
It doesn't matter.
Keep it that
Whatever
way.
it sounds like, it sounds
Keep
awful.
it that way.
You would love it.
Do you think Rob Manfred eats Scrapple? And
Absolutely not. No.
He is
And that's
Scrapple.
why he's
Rob-
so unhappy. He would be happier if he ate Scrapple.
when he sees you coming, into a press conference, does he just cringe in the corner and suck his thumb because he knows you're going to ask him a question that nobody else will?
He actually, I can't remember exactly what press conference it was, but there was one particular press conference where he made a point he said like, oh, you, and somebody else started talking. He said, Hannah, I meant to call on you first. He's trying to curry favor now by showing how unafraid he is to call on me.